work in a museum, there's lots of opportunities to do things. I started out as a curator in a museum, and I was in that case, you get to learn about the objects. In my case, I spent a lot of time learning about objects and really learning history itself. And it's more like sort of, I guess sometimes you can equate a curator almost with, if you're thinking about college, a professor in college. So you would equate, if you have a professor, you equate that with a curator. But the curator also knows objects. They don't just do books, they also do the artifacts. So, and then I decided that really museums were much more about people than they were about objects for me. And so I became an educator. And I can remember my boss thinking I was nuts. Because he came from an academic background. And, for him, the curator was the much stronger position. And I wanted to be an educator because I really, at the time I was working at the Ohio Historical Society, and but I was working on a project to plan and build an African American museum. And this museum had no collections. So as I thought about it, the way this museum was started is that people were really, the African American community wanted their story told. They wanted their own story. They wanted their own voice. They wanted that museum to have their voice. But they didn't have a major collection, and most museums were built around the fact there was a collection, so you built a building to house that collection. So this one was starting so differently. It was starting with people at the center, not a collection at the center. So the education department for me is the ombudsman for the public. So it was like, as an educator, I was representing the voice of the people and what would really work for them, and making sure that the museum would work for them and it would tell their story, not only tell their story, but it wouldn't just be a museum that was the best place for, where's the best place for the object, but also how could people get to see the object? What would they learn from it? What could it say to them? And, what position did they need to be in? So I'm worrying about how people would participate and interact in this institution, as opposed to just where the objects would be, and making sure that we were just taking care of them. Now, I think the artifacts are important, the collection's very important, but people are there as well. So I decided, I had a choice between heading up the curatory department or the education department, so I took education. So I've been an educator, and then I got to work on the process of planning the museum. We start to look for the architect and all of that. So I'm a museum planner, curator, an educator. You can be a designer in a museum. Someone has to design those beautiful exhibitions. So you can be an exhibit designer. You can be a conservator. Someone has to take care of the artifacts and make sure that they're going to be there available for your grandchildren, my great-great-grandchildren, and so on, and in perpetuity. So you want someone there that can take care of them. So you have a conservator. You also can have someone to make the beautiful pictures and things that we have that send out to tell us what's going on, our flyers and our billboards and our newsletters. So a graphic designer. You could be a graphic designer working in a museum. You can be a historian or someone that just does research and working in a museum. You can be an archivist working in a museum, someone that takes care of the artifacts, the paper collections. So you can have that job in a museum. You can do all kinds of wonderful. You can be an artist working in a museum that plan activities and events and actually help put together the exhibitions and all of that. You can be someone has to really run the store, make sure there's beautiful things in there that people can go and buy and spend money. So you can be a store man, the shop manager, and go out and buy stuff. Like to shop, great way to shop. But you got to learn how to, you also get to learn about the history or archaeology or whatever, or art. So it's not just you have to prepare yourself to even do that. And somebody has to welcome the visitors and take their money and all of that. So you can do that. You can be an event planner. Because, today in museums, people come and they have all kinds of really terrific events. So you can be an event planner and work in a museum. You can do all kinds of things. Or you can do what I do. You can have done some of those things and then get to be in charge of running the museum, have the responsibility for doing that.